Welcome to the Intimate Marriage Podcast, where I teach educated, successful couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships so that you can stop compromising and start feeling fully alive in your relationship. I'm Alexandra Stockwell, aka the Intimacy Doctor. I'm a physician, a relationship and intimacy coach, and I'm an intimate marriage expert. My husband and I have been married for 27 years. We have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing marriage. I've shown hundreds of couples how to do so as well. So if you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place. I will show you how. Now, let's dive in. I'm so excited to have you here, Barbara Huson. Let me say a welcome, and then I'm going to set the stage. But let me just tell you, my beloved audience, we're talking about money and intimacy today. So a warm welcome to you, Barbara.
Thank you. It's so good to see you. It's so good to be here.
I'm really glad you're here, and I have to say that money and intimacy, or lack of intimacy, lack of money, they've been coming up a lot, and I thought I really want to do a podcast. We all know that financial challenges or misunderstandings in marriage are one of the leading causes of divorce, and I thought, okay, if I want to talk about how to really up-level your intimacy in the context of money and financial conversations, there is nobody in the world that I want to have that conversation with other than you. And many people may know you as Barbara Stanny, though of course now you're Barbara Huson. And for those of you who know Barbara, no introduction is needed, absolutely none. For those of you who don't, there is so much to learn, but the way that I want to introduce you, Barbara, is by stating the name of your 7 books. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the arc of Barbara's attention and growing, evolving expertise and service in the names and in the titles of these books. So the first one you published was Prince Charming Isn't Coming. It's a name that I feel like the title itself is like reading a whole book. There's so much there. Prince Charming Isn't Coming. Then came Secrets of Six-Figure Women, followed by Overcoming Under-Earning, a book I highly recommend to anybody who wants more revenue in their life. Then came How to Find a Financial Advisor You Trust, followed by Breaking Through, on to a whole new landscape when you wrote the book Sacred Success, and then your most recent book, Rewire for Wealth, which is a phenomenal read combining neuroscience, desire, financial responsibility, personal growth, and other things as only you could put it with your expertise and life experience. So anything that you want to add by way of introduction?
Well, let me just say, thank you. You read all my books. So the first book, Prince Charming Isn't Coming, the subtitle is How Women Get Smart About Money. Because I never write my books as an expert. I write about what I want to learn. And so when I wrote that, I wrote it back in 1995, and it's still selling, which is absolutely amazing in the publishing world. But I wrote it in 1995, and my life was a mess financially. I was a mess financially. And I wrote this because I wanted to learn how smart women got smart about money. And I'm telling you, that did it. That did it. I wrote that book. Suddenly I had a whole new career. Traveling all over the country, doing financial education for women. So,
will you give an encapsulated version of the incredible intensity of the financial mess you were in when you started writing that book, because that really buys you moral authority to talk to money about absolutely anybody in any tax bracket.
So I grew up wealthy. My father was the R of H in our block, and the only advice he gave me about money was don't worry, which I thought was great advice. I didn't understand money. I just wanted to spend it. And as he assumed in those words, don't worry, there was always a man to take care of me. First there was my father, and then I married a stockbroker, so he was perfect. But what I found out very early in our marriage is that he was a compulsive gambler. And over the course of our 15-year marriage, I would find out many times a year, many times, that he was gambling my money, my inheritance away. And the insane part, Alexandra, is I continued to let him manage the money because that's how terrified I was and just intimidated I was by anything financial. And finally, after 15 years, we got a divorce. And I decided money is not my thing. I do not want to deal with money. Well, I have this theory that if you don't deal with your money will deal with you. And in the next year, I got tax bills for way over $1 million, almost $2 million. I did not have anywhere close to $1 million. My husband had lost it. He left the country, and my father wouldn't lend me the money. And that's when I knew I had to get smart. So I did what all the things you're supposed to do. I read the books, I went to classes, I subscribed to the Wall Street Journal, and it's like my eyes would glaze over, my brain would fog up. I just didn't know what to do, and I had 3 girls. I was not going to raise them on the street. I was terrified, but I knew I had to get smart. And I truly believe when you have a goal, like an intention, like a down to your toes commitment, the universe revolves to help you reach your goal. And that's when I was hired by a nonprofit organization. I was a journalist. I was working as a journalist, writing for the San Francisco Business Times, and they hired me to interview women who were smart with money. And that became my first book, and that became the beginning of a whole new career. I'm a financial therapist and wealth coach and author and teacher.
It's really amazing. You know, I first encountered you on the stages at the School of Womanly Arts, and I remember thinking you were very remarkable, you were very wise, you were very interesting, even though money is kind of boring. This was what I was thinking. And I just thought, you know, it's great you provide your services for those who need them. I personally grew up having a roof over my head. We didn't have much money, but I never had a feeling of want. There was always food and warmth and love. And I went through all of my schooling and got married and was about, I guess, 12 years into my marriage. We had had no debt other than educational debt, which of course was very considerable with 2 medical educations, but still it was educational debt, and that has good moral vibes around it, and a mortgage. And then in 2008, many different things occurred all at the same time. And suddenly, when all was said and done, we had $291,000 of credit card debt when I had always paid my credit card bill in full. And suddenly, I needed to have a different relationship with myself, a different relationship with my husband. I needed to get real. And that is when I started to show up on what then were Monday evening calls. I was living in rural Kansas at the same time. And it was just so uplifting to be in your world. And of course, that is not my situation anymore. I say, of course, because it was a high priority for me to change it. And I got the kind of guidance from you that involved love, belief, very specific education. And really, I just needed to grow into taking action in an area that was essentially dormant for me. Anyway, this was before I was a relationship and intimacy coach. I'm actually this month in my 10th year of coaching, but this was before then. And you shared a story that still gives me chills and gave me insight that maybe we can unpack together and go further. Would you like to tell that story about opening your books, sharing your portfolio with your new beloved?
So I had met this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. And we were dating for 2 years. And 2 years after we met, he moved in. And I remember thinking, and I knew it was serious. We needed to share our money stories. I needed to share the finances because he didn't know what I had. I didn't know what he had. I knew he did not have a lot of money. He was a retired, well, he hadn't retired yet, but he was a pilot. He made good money. He had no debt. That was the most important thing. I found out right away he had no debt. And that told me he was responsible. He knew how to take care of money, but I didn't know. And I was afraid because I knew I had a lot more than him. And I was scared what he would think. And it is...
Because as a woman, you thought you'd be less attractive? Like, what was the worst case scenario?
Because I didn't know how he would feel if I had more than him. I didn't know if he would... I felt fine. I had no problem with that. I had no problem with him having less. But I wasn't sure how he would feel.
If he would find it emasculating.
Yes, yes.
And actually, if I may interject, there's this very interesting statistic based on IRS data that when a woman earns more than her husband, she tends to round down when sharing how much she makes, and he tends to round up, so that when they communicate about it, they kind of close that gap as much as they can. So this is a very real problem in many people's lives.
Well, that's too bad, because sharing your finances is the ultimate intimacy. It's so easy to talk about sex. It's so easy to have sex on the first date. You don't talk about money on the first date or for a long time. So, but one thing I knew, and one thing, I made a list of everything I wanted in a man. And he had everything, 30 things. He had everything but one. It was the first one. I wanted him to be rich. But he had the second one, and that is I wanted him to have high self-esteem. And that he did. So he had no problem rounding up. I had no problem rounding down. And it was just very scary. It took me a long time to get financially naked. There's a wonderful book by Manisha Thakur. Do you know about that book?
No,
it's called
I don't.
It's called Getting Financially Naked. And it's about speaking to your loved one about money. And so it took me a long time, but I remember just one morning, I looked at him and I said, what if we share our financial information now? We talked about doing it, and neither one of us. And I brought out my last financial statement, and I just showed it to him. He wrote down everything he had, and he showed it to me. We got up, we washed the breakfast dishes, and we took a walk, and that was it. And it was wonderful, and it was like, it just felt like so intimate and so beautiful. That's why it's sad to have to not be completely truthful about money for couples, because it really does bring you closer.
You know, I remember when you shared that, when it was still fresh, and in your sharing it, I could feel your commitment to your relationship. And there was a time when your commitment to your relationship became stronger than whatever it was that had you not sharing it before that moment. And is that anything that, do you think about it that way? Is that anything you could say, speak to?
I was committed to the relationship, but I was committed to a relationship based on truth. I was committed to a relationship based on transparency and authenticity. So it wasn't just the relationship, it was the quality I wanted. And I knew this would be a part of it.
Amazing. And this, of course, is why you made the courageous move to professionally change your name from Stanny to Huson. Would you speak to that as well?
The reason I did that, so I didn't do it till 4 years after we got married. We got married in 2012 and I did it in 2018. I don't know. One day I was just sitting where I'm sitting now and I was looking out the window and my name was Barbara Stanny and I was thinking, wait, I still have the name of a man who I was very unhappily married to, who was never happy with me. And now I'm married to this amazing man who supports me completely, totally. And I just thought, I want to change my name. I just did it. I mean, it was kind of a spur of the moment, but I didn't. But the reason I did it, and I remember he said to me, don't do it, don't change it for me. I said, I'm not. But I think the real reason I changed it when I thought, well, maybe I'll change it to my maiden name. And I thought, no, my dad wasn't happy with me either. Maybe I'll make up a name. No, I wanted to have my husband's last name because he taught me about love. It was like not just the love I felt for him, but the love he had for me made me love myself more. I have never experienced unconditional love like I do with him. And it just gave me a whole new feeling about myself. So that's why I changed it.
Amazing. So you work with women. How do you see intimacy and money at odds with one another, dancing with one another? How do you help people with these kinds of matters?
Well, I think of money as the ideal lover. The ideal lover. Because all money wants from you is for you to be happy, to support you, to make your dreams come true. But in return, like any good lover, it needs to be respected and appreciated. It needs you to understand it. So if you let money support you and love you by taking care of it and respecting it and understand it, you'll live happily ever after. So to me, it's about intimacy with money. And that's what I teach. Because, and here's the thing, problems with money are never about money. I know you said that it's a big problem among relationships and is money, but the problem is not the money.
Of course not.
The problem, women's difficulties with money. I learned this right when I started doing this. I believe their difficulties with money have nothing to do with money. It has to do with their fear of or ambivalence about power. It's the same thing. Couples' struggles with money are not about money. It is always about power. And because it's not just about the money, it's who we have to become in order to be a container that can attract, that can sustain, and that can grow our wealth. It's like I define a powerful woman as someone who knows who she is, who knows what she wants, and expresses that in the world unapologetically. So essentially, our fear of power is our fear of becoming all of who we're meant to be, of speaking up, asking for what we want instead of watering ourselves down so we don't make waves.
Which is exactly my message about relationships and intimacy in general, that when we dilute and compromise, it just turns into blandness, and it's in being fully self-expressed and in our power, if you will, not in a dominating way, but in an honest, realistic way. When we are aligned with our power, that is the prerequisite, the landscape in which passion really flourishes. Now, if a woman, were you going to say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
To me, power is truth. Truth is power. So the more you speak your truth and live your truth, and you encourage your partner to live their truth and speak their truth, the more, to me, the more solid your relationship's going to be.
Yes, I completely agree. And the more passion will flourish in that kind of dynamic that you've just beautifully conveyed. And so I wonder specifically when the conversation is around finances, and what I actually see more often in my particular clientele is a woman who's balanced and, let's say, in her power around money, and the couple has more than adequate assets, and he's hesitant and gets sort of panicky about how the money is spent, probably because it's challenging for many couples to collaborate on the decision making, even if each of them could make the decisions well themselves. Is that something that you encounter and provide guidance on?
It's not, because the women who come to me are usually come to me because they're having problems with money. And maybe it involves their spouse, maybe, but they're having problems. They need to get their act together. So in the example you gave, the woman had her act together, the man was having difficulty. So she wouldn't come to me. She may go to a marriage counselor, but I don't think she'd come to me.
Okay.
And I don't work with men, so.
Why not? You know, you have such profound insight about men's behavior. I'm not saying you should. I'm just curious.
No, I really don't. First of all, men scare me. They really do. I think it's a dad thing. But also because men have different issues than women do with money. Men see each other. Men's brains and women's brains decipher financial information differently. There's just so much difference. And I feel very committed. I grew up during women's lib, and my first job out of graduate school was doing career counseling for those women who were re-entering the workforce in the 70s. So I've just always had this big passion for empowering women. It's just part of my DNA. I feel it's why I'm here.
Well, you certainly do empower women. So a lot of couples, when they are both smart professionals, one of the ways to succeed in family and marital life is division of labor. So she makes the dentist appointments, let's just say, not that these are equivalencies, and he handles the finances. But those were not equivalencies. I mean, she handles whatever she handles, he handles whatever he handles. But when he's the one handling the money, and she's just not worrying, let's say, as you were told to do, what's the next step for her to make that more collaborative and more intimate?
So there's nothing wrong if her husband or her partner or a financial advisor is handling the money. But what is really critical is that she participates in financial decisions from a place of knowledge and not fear, ignorance, or habit, which is how most people do. So the important thing is I would start by having money dates. By having money dates where you say, I'd like to start having regular money dates where we talk about money because I really need to learn. I really need to understand money. What if something happened to you? I would be at a loss. So because I know you love me and care about me and want to support me, and then you have money dates, and you have money dates just like you were preparing to make love. You would go someplace sexy, you would dress sexy, you would be happy, you would go to wherever, and you could turn down the lights and pour some champagne but it's important to talk about money, and you don't have to be long. And when you feel yourself getting scared or nervous, you express the truth. You build the intimacy by speaking your truth, that this is scary, or it's confusing, or I don't understand this, or if he seems to get mad or resentful, that you address that right there, that you don't let it slide, you don't bury it. So money is not just about, talks about money are not just about money. It's about everything else that needs to be said and placed on the table in full view.
So if a couple is going to have a money date, which sounds super fun the way you describe it, but it's going to take a few practices, let's just say, for it to really be something to look forward to, I find it's
Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. No, don't. We won't even go there.
Okay.
You set it up. No, no, no. No, 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 no. You set it up differently. You don't set it up like we're going to talk about money, and I know this is scary.
Okay, this is exactly what I want to get into. Go ahead.
Okay, good. No, no. You start from a place of love.
Mm-hmm.
You start by feeling the love for her or him, whatever the partner is, whoever the partner is. You feel the love. You express the love. You ask for their support because you want to learn and you want to get involved. And meanwhile, on your own, it's a good time to start doing the 3 steps to get smarter about money. So can I interfere?
Yes, please.
So use this proposal to have money dates, to let them know you're going to start studying money on your own, that they don't have to do everything for you. You just want to understand what they're doing and participate. And so here's what I did, because damn, this money stuff is overwhelming. I mean, it's
like a whole
hard.
other language, and the grammar is hard to find.
It's completely, every industry has its own jargon. This is no exception. So here's 3 steps. You ask for the money date and you start doing these 3 things. Every day, read something about money, even if it's just for a minute or 2. Like, it would be overwhelming for me to have to read a whole newspaper, so I would just take the business section of the newspaper and just peruse the headlines. Or then I started subscribing to the Wall Street Journal, and I would just peruse the headlines. Or I'd stand in line at the supermarket. Instead of getting People magazine, I'd leaf through Money magazine. So every day, read something about money, just for a minute or 2. Before you go to bed, read a paragraph in a financial book. Because so much of getting smart or smarter, as you said, Alexandra, is just familiarizing yourself with the jargon, with the current trends. So every day, read something about money. I called it the Osmosis School of Learning, and I swear to God, I still do it to this day. Every day, read something about money. Every week, have a conversation about money, preferably with someone that knows more than you. I mean, this is what I started doing. Time I'd meet someone who was smart about money, I'd say, can I pick your brain? Can I ask you some questions? Can I call you? Can we go out for tea? Because it's our secrecy and silence that keeps us stuck. We'll go out and we'll moan and groan about money, but when's the last time you sat down with a friend or a colleague or a family member and said, how did you get smart? What's the smartest thing you ever did? What's the stupidest thing you ever did? What's the best advice someone gave you? What's the worst advice? Where did you start? How would you suggest I start? Just start asking them questions, and people love to talk. They generally love to talk. So every day read, every week talk, and every month save. Automatically have money transferred from your checking account or your payroll check to a savings account. And you don't miss what you don't see. So every day read, every week talk, and every month save. And you'll be amazed. You do this for a couple of months, you will know so much.
It's so potent. I know that this is incredible advice no matter where somebody is in regard to their financial education, confidence, and net worth. And I think one of the things that you've said, I really want to highlight, because if, particularly as women, we feel financially uninformed, we can really feel very young, a lot younger than our biological age. And so there's something about, especially if your husband is managing the money and we're going to have a date, it can feel a little bit like a parent-child dynamic or a student-teacher dynamic. And the person who's more informed may have some guidance to offer, but I absolutely love what you're saying, which is really, it's the woman's job to take responsibility for her education. If she identifies questions that she wants to ask, she can ask them on the date, and if she doesn't, that's fine too. It's a little bit like a woman discovering her sexuality. she's got to get the mirror out and look at her genitals. She's got to learn to touch herself so that she can give her lover a tour of what feels wonderful and not expect him to figure it out on her behalf. There's a way in which being a mature woman involves parenting ourselves, taking responsibility, and not looking to a spouse to provide that, because it's not going to serve in the long term. Anything you'd say to that?
No, it's I love what you said. It's because really becoming financially responsible is really it's really a rite of passage into our power. It's a rite of passage into adulthood. It's going from a dependent child to a sovereign adult. And you're absolutely right about that. That's why it's important to educate yourself. But it's also, you can look at it as threatening, or you can look at it as an act of self-love. And what I remember one of the things I said to my husband before we were married, and we were talking about the money when I hadn't quite done it yet because I was nervous. I said, but when we share our finances, I want to use this to bring us closer and to take us higher. And when I finally did, I said, no, we're going to use this to bring us closer and to take us higher. And so let's be loving. Like I set some ground rules. Let's be really loving and accepting, and ask me any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them lovingly.
It's so magnificent what you've just said. I am very clear that one of the huge contributors to successful communication in a marriage is being really clear what kind of communication you're having, which is something that many couples don't actually take the time and create the intentionality to identify it. And you've described your success in being very clear what the conversation is and also what the purpose is. And I love that you planned for it, sort of like an old-fashioned couple having a conversation about when they're going to first have sex, instead of having the bodies just make it happen without a conversation. Because I know you said earlier it's much easier to talk about sex, and it may well be that it's much easier to talk about sex, but for many couples it is way more comfortable to have sex than to actually talk about it. So that's certainly also true for money. And I just want to emphasize that you set it up to be a win-win by being really clear what the purpose was, what the guidelines are, like what the rules of this game are going to be. And that already makes it collaborative. It's just so luscious to hear you say that. And there's something in how you spoke earlier about becoming financially sovereign and the rite of passage, which, unlike other aspects of human growth, does not have a particular biological age associated with it. There are other, where we become sovereign is just clear. We go into puberty or we go into menopause, whatever it is. We're moving to the next phase of life. And I wonder if there are any clear markers that you would identify for someone to know, oh, I've crossed over, it's based on our conversation, it would be clear when this rite of passage is beginning. But
it begins the moment you decide to take responsibility. How you know you pass to the other side?
Yes.
I don't know that you do. Only in hindsight can you tell, damn, my debt's paid off. Darn, I have $10,000 saved. Wow, I just had this conversation with my husband and it went great, and I know more than I did. Only in hindsight do you know.
I met with the financial advisor and I understood everything he or she said.
Or I went with a financial planner and financial advisor, and I understood about 80% of what he said. And that is awesome, you know?
Yes. And the difference from not understanding anything to 20% is a fine phase too. It's on the way to understanding 30%. It means have another conversation.
Yeah, anyway, I remember the time that I first felt powerful.
Yes.
Is I had been doing those 3 steps, reading and talking and saving, and I was at it was a conference or something, and I didn't understand anything. And then someone talked about a certain kind of mutual fund, a sector fund, and I understood. I understood what a mutual fund was, and I understood what a sector fund. He started talking about something else, never understood anything else. But just understanding that one thing was like such a win for me. I felt so powerful.
That is amazing. And how else did that show up? You know, how we do anything is how we do everything. So the power from that moment, anything that you would say about, I don't know, how that influenced you in your mothering, in any other part of your life?
It's certainly one of the things I did in my mothering is I shared my process with my kids. I had 3 daughters. One was just a baby at the very beginning, but I shared the process. I shared how I needed to understand money. I shared the books I was reading. I even took them to a financial planner with me, and they both had their head down and falling asleep. But I just exposed them to this because in my family, probably in yours, most families, we never talked about money at all. And so that has been one of the best things I did because they have grown up to be extremely responsible.
So the opposite of don't worry.
The opposite of don't worry. Although I didn't say worry. I just said learn.
No, I meant that your father said to you, don't worry.
Yeah.
And what you're
and
describing
I did not say that
is,
to them.
Right. It's, I don't know exactly how you would encapsulate it, but it sounds like at its basics, it's keep learning. I don't know.
Yeah. Money is something you need to understand. It's just a basic thing in life. It can be, it can make life wonderful. It can make life really tough. And all you need to do is understand it. And it's not that hard. There's a whole industry that makes it sound like it's going to be tough. But no, the basics are so simple.
There's something in how you say money is something to be understood because all of us are used to understanding lots of different things. And it's just bringing the part of ourself that learns and understands to money. And for whatever reason, so many of us arrive in adulthood, bringing that part of ourselves to lots of areas of life, but not to this one. And I just think you are such a magnificent guide and kind of an invitation to bring the part of ourselves that learn and understand to the incredibly impactful, intimate, and impact-related area of money.
You know, one of the best ways to learn, and research has shown that women learn best about money with other women, in women-only groups. There's a part of their brain that actually lights up. They have done research when they are sitting with women. And one of the things that I did about 5 years ago is it was my dream to create a safe place where we women could come together and talk openly and honestly and deeply around money as women, because we talk about it differently than men do. And so I created an online community called the Wealth Connection that has just been, it's been so near and dear to my heart. And so whether you look into the Wealth Connection or if you want to learn about money, great to do it with your partner, but also get together a group of women and maybe have a book club or just talk about money or studies different things. It's a great way to learn.
That's magnificent. And I want to include the link to the Wealth Connection in the show notes, so you can certainly click there. And every interview I do, I ask a question that I'd love to ask you now, which is, you've actually answered it earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and see if you want to add anything to the answer you've already given, because it is my absolute conviction that intimate relationships are the ultimate vehicle for personal growth. So I wonder, what you've learned about yourself as a result of being married to your incredible husband.
Well, I've learned to love myself. To see myself through his eyes, I see myself very different. You cannot grow outside of relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship or any relationship. It's only in relationships, I believe, that you can grow. So both Lee and I have had faced many challenges together that have forced each of us to grow. So, damn, he's been good for me. He's been really good. And I didn't meet him till I was 60 years old. So it's never too late.
I love that that's part of your message about money, about marriage, about intimacy, about really all of the goods in life. There's always more available no matter when you get started. That's
and it's never,
so magnificent.
Ever too late to start. Never.
Absolutely. Well, anything else that you'd like listeners to know?
No, you can find me on my website, Barbara-Huson.com.
Which is Huson. And again, that will be in the show notes. And I just want to add, depending on where you are as a listener, pick up Prince Charming Isn't Coming, Secrets of Six-Figure Women, or Overcoming Under-Earning if that's where you are in your financial journey. And if you are beyond that, by all means, read Sacred Success and Rewire for Wealth. They are abundant invitations to expand your intimacy with money and in turn your intimacy with your partner. So Barbara, thank you so much for having this conversation and being so generous in the area in which you're so abundant. Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful. I love talking to you, Alexandra.
Thank you.